This is John Ridley.
And this is Matt Carey, documentary editor at Deadline.com.
Matt, how are you?
Oh, great, John. Excellent to see you. You've got your Sade hoodie on.
It's all good.
Your favorite artist in music. I want to ask you about artists in the world of cinema. Stanley Tucci, one of the finest, I think, one of our finest actors. And I'm just curious, of all the performances he's given in film, if there are any that are your favorites of Stanley Tucci.
I'll tell you this, what really stood out to me is I remember truly the first time that I saw Mr. Tucci on film. And this was a 1995 film. It was a remake of a 1947 film called Kiss of Death. And this was a film, it was stacked with some of the best actors who are still like out there working. Samuel L. Jackson was in it, Nicolas Cage, Helen Hunt, Bing Rames, and Stanley Tucci played a shady, not going to say corrupt, shady district attorney, but he's just, the way he approaches every scene, it's both, truly very fundamental in terms of his acting, but elevated and really does the business of creating a character, and he was like, fifth on the call sheet, but he really stood out in every single scene. So to me, that first iteration, I barely remember that film. A couple of scenes that really stood out to me, but Mr. Tucci.
You remember him?
Oh, yeah. There's a scene where he's eating a hot dog, and it's just like
eating a hot
performance art.
Wow.
The things that stick with me, stick with me. And the one thing that I will say is I love cinema, and I tend to be very encyclopedic about it. But when someone like Stanley Tucci puts in a performance, as Mr. Tucci often does, it makes it easy to remember where you were and when it was when you saw it. But why? Let me ask you this. Why are we talking about Stanley Tucci? We do documentaries.
Exactly. Well, going back into Stanley's career, of course, he directed Big Night, in which he played a chef. Yeah. Well, he was not pretending about his interest in food because he has a new documentary series for National Geographic called Tucci in Italy, where he is exploring his ancestral homeland, going top to bottom, in search of culture and in search of cuisine, in search of community. It's really a fascinating series, brand new to National Geographic, and will be submitted for Emmy consideration this year. Kind of a follow-up to a series he did for CNN, of course. This new one, as they say, is called Tucci in Italy. Let's take a listen to the trailer for this series.
Whoa, that is delicious. Oh man.
Oh, stop it.
Wow. Now I'm more hungry.
Me too.
I'm Stanley Tucci, and I believe that the best way to understand what makes a country and its people unique is through their food. Okay, mangiamo. And this is true nowhere more than Italy.
This is a secret.
Oh, really? Because it's going to go on television and then,
Yeah, this is literally a delicious doc series. And as you mentioned, it's more than just about the food. It's about culture. It's about people. And it is a bit about politics as well, which I really appreciated in terms of the breadth of what Mr. Tucci tries to accomplish each and every week in this multi-part series. So here is our conversation, me, John Ridley, along with Matt Carey, with the star of the new series, Tucci in Italy, Mr. Stanley Tucci.
Stanley Tucci, it's wonderful to have you on Doc Talk. You are the host and executive producer of the new Nat Geo series, Tucci in Italy. Thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you. Thanks.
It's your further travels in your ancestral homeland of Italy. These 5 episodes where you're really traveling all around Italy. Some fascinating regions, some very well known, like Tuscany, of course. Others not so well known, a little bit off the beaten path. How did you select the areas that you wanted to visit and the food and culture that you wanted to explore?
I wanted to go to regions I hadn't been to before in the show or even personally. But also, obviously, we repeated regions that we had, gone to in the first series. first iteration of the series,
Right.
because there are so many stories to tell. And then we have a team of researchers who are looking into stories in the regions that we've chosen. Some of the stories are stories that I wanted to explore. I'd say like, oh, I went to this place one time and I really liked it, and I like this guy, and I think it's a really interesting story. Blah blah blah. The food was really good, and this is what's interesting about it because it makes a connection to blah blah blah. Or something like in Lombardy when in Milan, I was very interested in what was happening politically in
Yeah.
Italy regarding gay marriage, surrogacy, adoption, and gay rights. I said, can we find a couple that is experienced? I'd like to know what their experiences are. And of course, all of these stories are seen through the prism of food.
Mm. And what incredible food it is. Is there anything that you will not eat? Because we see you in this series eating tripe. Now,
Yeah,
tripe in Italian sounds a lot tastier. Trippa.
it does.
Trippa sounds pretty good to me. Tripe, maybe not so much. Snails. You're eating some really interesting foods. Is there anything that is nah, I'm not going to go there kind of food?
I'm not a person who eats a lot of spice. One, I can't eat it
Ah,
because of, but even before I had like cancer treatments and stuff like that, I couldn't eat. I didn't care for spice,
uh,
so I suppose that's something. Um, that kind of stuff that you mentioned. It's funny in America we don't eat stuff like that so much,
yeah,
but we
yeah.
did before World War II. But then after World War II, all of that stuff, it all
Mm,
changed. But it is still very much a part of the Italian diet, and lots of and the European diet. I mean, snails in France, everywhere.
escargot.
Escargot, everywhere. The American diet has changed so distinctly
Mm,
post World War II. It's become now very bland, and you'll only get,
yeah.
that kind of stuff like snails or tripe or whatever, which is peasant food, basically.
Mm,
That's
mhm.
what you're gonna get in a really high-end restaurant and pay a lot of money for it, and it doesn't make
Mm.
any sense.
Well, also in the episode in Lombardy, I mean, beautiful photography throughout
Yeah.
the series, but there's a wonderful scene, I guess I should call it a scene, where you're basically eating salad in a vase. That's how I would put it. And at Da Vittoria, the
Yeah,
restaurant, and
yeah.
it's sprayed marvelously, sprayed with a mister. That's how the dressing comes out of it. But
Yeah, yeah.
that's just
That's
such a
like
beauty to the food as well and
I know,
presentation.
that's high-end Italian dining, right? That's fine, high-end, fancy Michelin Italian dining. But what I love about those guys, and I had been to that restaurant before years ago, everything comes from their humble beginnings. And they still take the care that was taken when their father started the restaurant how
Mm.
many years ago. And that even though everything's very elevated now, the same ethos
Mm,
remains, which is high quality and seasonal. But the recipes, change. But for me, going to that place, it's really, really interesting because they're very much a family. It's very comfortable. Yes, it's sort of fine dining, fancy stuff, but you never feel uptight when you're there.
mm.
One of the things, Mr. Tucci, I really appreciate about the show, and by the way, reviews for the show are glowing.
Oh, good.
There's one that I found in Forbes that
Yes.
says one of the things they really appreciate about the show, you're not just selling a lifestyle, let's go eat and this and that, but the show really is about lineage, as you were just
Yeah.
saying. You go and you speak to farmers or restaurateurs, or I believe it was in the second episode, the daughter of someone whose family had been in the restaurant business forever and she'd broken off and started her own restaurant.
Yeah.
And I found that really, really interesting because there's so many times I think we all take our food for granted, not just food insecurity, but there's food, I'm going to eat it. whether it's seeing the food cooked or where it came from, there's
Yeah.
something really wonderful about going back to the beginning and saying, it's not just something we're shoveling into our bodies, there's a story with every bite.
The last provocation on the menu is a Japanese ossobuco, replacing veal shank with raw swordfish bone marrow. Ingenious.
And I feel like in watching it, with every bite you take, you're enjoying the story for us.
Yes, that's very well put. Thank you. Thank you, because that's sort of what I want to. You expressed it so much better than I could. That's the point of the show, is that there is a story connected to every dish, and that story can go back not just generations; it can go back millennia, and that is the really interesting thing to me about Italy.
And let's talk about this, because a lot of our audience are documentarians and they appreciate the process. And you're not just a host on the show, you're producing the show. And there's a moment at the very end, because I really watch, and I had to stop and freeze and go back. And I believe there's a stamp that talks about salt productions at your production company and doing sustainable offsets, carbon offsets in terms of this production, because that's just really important, obviously, I would say to you, and you can talk about that. But also in a lot of the farming, you know, when people are either doing things as their ancestors did them, there's a greater connection to the land and sustainability and using every part of the animal. But also there's an episode where you're talking about technology and a version of hydroponics where they're using less water to grow things. Can you just talk about for a moment, whether it's in traditional means, in modern means, or for you as a producer, how important it is to be close to the food and the land?
Yeah, it's crucial. And unfortunately, we've gotten away from that, as we were sort of talking about before. After World War II, you know, we know that everything became more mechanized, which in a way was not a bad thing, but it was, food became, we overproduced. We started just sort of growing these, it was monocrops, right?
Yeah.
So you're producing, companies are buying up farms, and every farmer is going to then produce soybeans, and that land is then going to be, you know, filled with chemicals and fertilizers. And this certainly after World War II, there was all this new technology and all this. So, and what that did was, it in essence fucked up the natural, the natural process of farming, right? Which is, you plant a field, and then with something, you plant the other field with something else. 1 year you let it lie fallow, then the blah, blah, blah. And you just keep rotating. You're rotating your crops. You're not doing this monocrop thing. And all those farms ended up becoming mega farms owned by conglomerates. And that fucks up the soil, and it fucks up our diet. And it messes up the community, and it takes away the connection to the land. If a farmer is growing something, he's growing something, yes, to sell it, but he's also growing stuff for himself to sustain his family. But that disappeared. So our connection to the land has been lost. And that's happened in Italy too. I'm not saying it's just America. It's happened everywhere. But Italy, because of the size of the country and because of the sort of topography, there are people who are still doing stuff the way they've been done for a long time. But a lot of younger people are going back and starting to work farms sustainably, or grow or breed cattle or pigs or whatever sustainably. And that's a really, really important thing, because you maintain that connection. Once you maintain the connection with the land, you're going to maintain that connection is going to follow you to the table. And that connection then is at the table. You're going to make connections with your family and with your friends. It's all like a perfect circle or cycle if we allow it to be. I'll say one more thing. I live in England, and what's really interesting to me is that when I moved there, you know, all the eggs were, you just leave the eggs out on the counter. And in Italy too, and most of Europe, you just leave the eggs out on the counter. You don't have to refrigerate them. don't have to refrigerate them because they're not chemically washed. When they're chemically washed, you're removing this sort of natural filter that's there. And so you have to refrigerate them. Otherwise, they go bad like that. So in England, and you'll buy them in the grocery store, in the big groceries, you buy them. They still have shit on them. They still have feathers on them. And they're amazing eggs. And if you were to try to sell that in America, people would go like, why is there shit on my egg? And they're like, well, it's because it came out of a chicken's ass or wherever it came out of.
Wherever
You know
it
what I
comes
mean?
out of.
It's that. And there are feathers. Yeah, there are feathers. Yeah. And when you buy a chicken, sometimes there are still feathers on it.
Yeah, we don't recognize natural
We
food
get
anymore.
afraid of it. It's weird.
If it's not in plastic wrap, we don't want it.
Right.
There's an episode, I'm going to mispronounce this, but they're the Italian cowboys, the Buttieri? Buttieri. And it's really interesting where they talk about their lives and that they work their cows across the land. They keep them moving. They don't let them settle in one place. It's much harder, but when you see the meat that is produced and we watch you taste it, which is the one most difficult thing about the show, because you want that explosion of food in my mouth while I'm watching you enjoy it, but you can just see the difference in the food and then also just the people who work it. It's like, hey, this lifestyle may not be for me, but for the moment, I want to be here and I want to do this thing and grow the food in a very, very particular way. It's quite powerful to
good.
watch.
I'm glad. I found them so interesting. I had no knowledge of them. And the fact that really, I guess there are only like 20 of them left, except for others who do events and stuff, as the fellow said in the show. It's really, really interesting to see that part of Tuscany that I didn't know existed.
You know, you are one of the most established actors
Will
working.
you please tell my age with that? Yes, thank you.
Only if you call my agent and tell them as well. But seriously, if folks have not seen Conclave, it's a phenomenal film, and you're very central to it and give a terrific performance. But I'm curious for you in doing this series and the previous series, and there's a lightness and an interest, and I can tell that you're learning, and through your learning, you're passing it on to us. I'm curious for you, with this series, is it something that you really wanted to do, and go with me for 1 second, or do you find that there's something very reinvigorating for you and a need to do something different and explore something and to produce and to be in a space where, as much as I'm sure you're wonderful, it's wonderful to work with an ensemble like you had on Conclave, but to go out in the world and express yourself in a very different way. And I'm wondering if the joy or what you get back from it is a little different than what you get when you're doing a major motion picture.
Yeah, it is very different. The show is something, it was an idea that I had 20 years ago. And it was when I first did the first iteration of it with CNN, who subsequently decided not to continue making it. It was just by happenstance that CNN came to me and said, do you have any ideas for a show, like a doc series?
Yeah.
And I said, and I gave them 3 ideas. And this was one of them. And that was the one where they went, oh, okay, we get to go to Italy. We put it together and I said, this is how I want to do it. This is the idea. This is the tone of it. And I don't want it to be precious. I don't want it to be food porn. I want to explore the complexities of Italy through the prism of food. And they signed on and we did it. And then, as I said, they stopped doing it. And now, luckily, Nat Geo has signed on to do it. And we've continued that and hopefully sort of, heightened it a bit, meaning hopefully made it a bit better. It's a story that I always wanted to tell. And I've been thinking about this lately because stories to me actors are innate storytellers, right? It's one of the reasons they act, because they want to tell stories. So I did that as an actor. I've done that. Will continue to do that as an actor. At a certain point in my life, I got interested in writing and directing. And I did that too. I wanted to tell stories that way. And then I wrote some cookbooks and I wanted to tell stories that way. And now telling a story this way is another way of telling the story that I want to tell. I think that there are so many stories to tell, not necessarily my story, but they would be through my lens, I suppose. And I want to do that in different mediums. I want to do that through painting, through sculpture, through food, through I don't know what. And before I die, I want to explore all those different mediums because they give me joy. But I know that people are interested. You become an actor because you don't want to do the same thing all the time. I want to take it even further than that. I want to try different things because I don't want to just be an actor all the time. I guess.
Renaissance man. You're
Well,
a
I
true
don't know about
Renaissance
that,
man.
but yeah.
One of the things I think is wonderful, speaking of the Renaissance and Tuscany, Toscana, is to hear you speaking Italian. And then we learn in the episode on Tuscany that you spent a year in Florence as a kid, which is pretty remarkable. I'm going to guess that that's where if you had Italian going in, it was much better at the end of that trip. What did that year mean to you?
Oh, that year was life changing. That was I was 12, so that was 51 years ago, and it was an incredible year. I did not speak Italian at all. My dad spoke some Italian. My mother spoke a little bit of Italian, but mostly a Calabrese dialect. And so we arrived there in the summer. Was there for like a month at first, then was thrown right into an Italian school. And within 2 months, I spoke Italian because you had to. You just had to. Unfortunately, I didn't really keep it up, as the years went on. But every time I went back to Italy, I would be able to speak a little bit better. And the longer I stayed, the better you can speak. So then prior to doing the show, the very first iteration of the show, I actually took some Italian lessons for a few months to prepare again because my Italian is quite clumsy, unfortunately. I have a good accent, but that's only because I live there. I'm an actor. So I'm sort of almost pretending to speak Italian a lot of the time.
I wouldn't. You can't give away your stagecraft. I would not have known. Very smooth. It seemed good to me. That's all I can say.
We cut out the bad parts.
Well, you clearly understand.
I do. I can understand it. Yeah.
Beautiful.
Allora, questo è il lardo che va tagliato molto fine.
Sì.
E sentirai che gusto. Anch'io. Adesso mia mamma ti preparerà una ricetta tipica colonnatese che si chiama coniglio lardato.
Io amo il lardo, amo il coniglio. Allora, ma io amo la mamma.
And also in the episode in which you go to the northeastern part of the country, you're speaking a bit of German, at least in the intro. And of course, for those who don't know, and they'll learn it in the episode, this is very much a Germanic area, if I can put it that way. And this is Trentino-Alto Adige, sometimes known as South Tyrol.
Yes.
And for anyone who wonders about the melding of cultures there, it can be explained again through food where in one moment you're seeing sauerkraut being made in polenta. So that kind of...
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah. And then a kind of lasagna is being cooked at the same time. And then a goulash is being cooked in the same kitchen. Like it's kind of amazing. And they all speak German. They all speak Italian, and they speak Latin. You saw the episode, which is an ancient culture of that area. And I had studied German for 3 years in high school.
Okay.
And I'm kind of fascinated by the language. I love languages. So the idea that we were there, with people who were speaking a lot of German was really interesting to me. That's why I had to do a cheap sort of opening in my
sounded good to me. You've got the accents down for sure. Bitte. But I know that, John, you wanted to ask about Stanley, what you brought up of this episode in Lombardy, which is so interesting, where you don't hesitate to go into areas that are political in nature as you explore the food and culture and lives that are being lived by people in various parts of Italy.
I was just going to say, and I think you're going to put it in context, is just please, if you can talk about this family and what they're facing in Italy, not a lot different than what we're facing in America, but
No,
I
no,
appreciate that you put it in.
exactly. It's Italy has gone. Government has gone quite far right. Of course, the government was elected by the people. So there is in Italy, because of where it sits geographically, receives immigrants from everywhere. I think more immigrants than any other European country. And Italy has dealt with that very well to a certain extent. But I think they started to become overwhelmed. Once that happens, immigrants are vilified and they just become others. And that's what we obviously are seeing in this country because of our government. But not only that, the right leaning government in Italy has done to gay couples, surrogacy, gay couples who want to adopt, gay marriage, all that sort of stuff. They're suddenly they're sort of persona non grata. And in this case, it's a gay couple who had a child through surrogacy in the States. When they left to get the child, bring the child back, because of the new laws, that child has no right to Italian citizenship, even though the fathers are both Italian citizens. There's a law also that basically only one of them can be the legal parent. If that parent dies, the child becomes a ward of the state. The other parent has no rights. It really doesn't make any sense. And I find it really interesting in a country that is all about family, quote unquote, that this is the policy. So what kind of family are you talking about? Oh, you're talking about the man, the woman, and the woman has the baby. And then that's a family. Otherwise, there's no such thing as a family. So, and that's what's happening in our country too. And I find that really disturbing. How many children need to be adopted? Millions. How many gay couples love each other and just want to have a family? How many gay couples are like amazing parents? I have friends who are gay couples and are amazing parents. Who are we to say? How many heterosexual couples are terrible parents? Most of them.
Sadly. Sadly, this is true. And I love how you end that episode, speaking of languages, where you define or tell us, for those who have not studied Latin, what the Latin word for family means.
Yeah.
That was very powerful.
Household is what it means. And to me, that's enough. I don't understand why you would try to stop somebody from loving someone else or loving a child. I don't get it.
And we see the nonnas.
And the nonnas
in the episode, how in love they are with their grandchild. They couldn't be happier.
One of them, I don't remember which one, was conservative prior to this happening. And obviously has changed her too, because she said, this child has completely changed my life. I think, and I also find it ironic that Italy has practically a negative birth rate. So why wouldn't you want to have more young people who are Italian citizens? Why?
Very interesting parallels to the U.S. and
unfortunately,
administration ostensibly wanting more babies produced, and one wonders what do we want white babies? Do we want that's the we don't have to go there right
Where's
now.
Atwood?
Yeah, exactly. And as you mentioned, the series is not food porn. There's many, many, many beautiful, extraordinary dishes and moments that for the audience to savor, not to try to use food puns here. But I wonder for you, and maybe this changes on a daily basis as memories come up, but is there one or two or three dishes that are just like, that just blows the top off my head and that's the memory I want to hold on to forever of.
Yeah, I think those dishes up in Trentino-Alto Adige, like the knödel, the German Knäderli, as they say in Italian, those dumplings were just incredible. And the food that the Ladins made, that family made, was kind of amazing. I think also when we were in Abruzzo, the timballo that woman made, which is layers and layers of crepes, not pasta, but crepes.
Yeah, that was
With
amazing.
egg that's put in to make it slightly rise a little bit like a souffle with ragu and meatballs. And I mean, Jesus, it was amazing. And of course, influenced by the French, and the one up north was influenced by Germany and Eastern Europe. So to see the fact that, excuse me, one of the reasons I wanted to make the series, it was to sort of dispel the myth that everything is spaghetti and meatballs and everything is really sunny and everybody's really happy all the time. You know, they're not happy all the time. You know, they're people. How can they be happy all the time? I mean, they'd be idiots if they were happy all the time. You know, they come from a country that has been invaded for thousands of years, and yet they persevere, and they make the best of everything they have. And that is the thing that makes them happy, is that they are incredibly facile at accessing whatever they have and making something great out of it. That's the genius of Italy.
We get to experience that in such wonderful, rich, and fulfilling ways in your series, Tucci in Italy, joined by Stanley Tucci, the host and executive producer of the Nat Geo series. It's just been great speaking with you.
Thank you.
And thank you. We hope for more seasons and more adventures in Italy.
Well, thank you. And
More food.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for joining
Thank
us,
you,
Mr.
guys.
Tucci. Pleasure.
Yeah,
Bye. What a pleasure. Thank you.
You know, Matt, I enjoyed all this documentary series. There was a moment, I believe it was in the last doc, where Mr. Tucci is getting a Roma pizza, and it is the really super thin crust. A couple of years ago, I was actually working on a film in Italy. I was there a very short time, but you got to get a pizza there. I got the Roma pizza, and just seeing it was just like an LSD, flashback trip to like one of the best meals I've ever, you think pizza, you think you've had every kind of pizza until you've had a Roma pizza in Rome. You really have not had pizza.
There might be fighting words for the people of Napoli, which is also famed for its pizza and different kind of pizza there.
Could I just say, I hope I start a little bit of a fight, and I hope that they reach out to me and say, we're going to show this Ridley guy what the best pizza in the world is like. Right. I will happily fly myself to Italy, which is everything that is in the stock series. If you haven't been to Italy, oh my gosh, what a phenomenal country, phenomenal people, phenomenal food, phenomenal lifestyle. But I would happily go and do a pizza taste test around Italy. We'll see if we can get it started. I'll bring you along.
I love that idea. I would be, I'm there.
Yeah, we'll bring a camera. We'll make a little doc series.
Put the napkin on and put the bib on and head out there with you and be very, very happy traveling Italy. Eating or not eating, I mean, I'll fast if that's what it takes, but so much the better if we can eat our way through Italy.
We got our dreams. It's okay to have dreams in life. Who knows? We keep this up for another 5-10 years. Maybe we can make it happen.
Yeah, we're going to be traveling quite a bit.
Well, you
not
are.
only
What do you
Stanley.
mean we?
Well, I'd say we. It's collectively. And so on our upcoming episodes of Dog Talk, we're going to have some coverage from Millennium Docs Against Gravity, the documentary festival in Poland. And then we'll see what's happening in Cannes.
Yeah,
There's
sure.
definitely some big premieres happening there. Bono, a documentary about Bono. It's going to world premiere Raoul Peck's latest film, which is about George Orwell. So there's lots of stars in Cannes, of course, every year, but always some excellent documentaries too.
Oh, that sounds phenomenal. As always, we appreciate you going out there. Matt, safe travels.
Thank you.
Hope you have a really phenomenal time in all seriousness. And look forward to, hopefully you'll have some reporting and things you can share with us. You do a phenomenal job of digging stories out of these festivals and sharing them with the audience. So thank you very much.
My pleasure.
Here's hoping you get back in the country too. I'm not going out on a limb for you because
Can't take it for granted.
I'm enjoying my stay. I'm not trying to get on anybody's bad side, but please come back safely if you can. All right, sir. And to our audience, hope to see you again next week on Doc Talk.